I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. First of all, it's a little bit later in the release of the Monday broadcast of the podcast. A lot of casting going on there. And that's, I don't know if you were planning on listening at midnight or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. I appreciate you listening whenever you happen to be doing that. But we had been traveling, and we decided that we went, we had a football weekend, as they all are now in the fall. And so by the time we got home from Nebraska last night, so this is clearly recorded on Monday morning now, and we got home, and I just like, you know what? After driving, I just decided I was going to take a little bit of a break. And so it's still out today, and I appreciate you letting me know if you say, hey, is everything okay? Yeah, it's fine. I just hadn't recorded it yet. And so here I am today. I'll tell you what happened this weekend. As a football weekend, as it has been. And Friday night, the high school team won. Congratulations to the high school team. My youngest son, Colin, plays for the Forest City Indians, and he was playing there on varsity. Had a great return, and they had a hard time stopping him. He says that's because they were all his size, and maybe that's true. But overall, it was a great night for the Indians. They won. They got their first victory, and saw a lot of good things. I don't know how good the other team was, and so that is what it is. But everybody tried hard, and the Indians came out on top over the Eagles. And so that was fun. That was fun for everybody to say, hey, listen, these young guys are getting some playing time, including my son, Colin. And that was cool to see. It's cool to see them get a win. There may not be a whole bunch of those this season, which leads me to the next day of football, where Waldorf University, which we're big supporters of, and our son Jack plays at Waldorf, and we went out to Crete, Nebraska, to a school called Doane University. I think it's the oldest private school in Nebraska. The Doane Tigers out there. Nice campus, and town about the size, maybe a little bit bigger than Forest City, where we live, and overall, pretty good experience. We actually had the chance to meet the former head coach at Waldorf University, who was the coach for the current head coach at Waldorf University. And the current head coach, Tyler Chapa, played at Doane University, and he played under Josh Littrell. Josh Littrell then went to Waldorf University, was the head coach, and really turned things around for Waldorf University several years ago. Now, I don't know how many, 6, 7, 8 years ago now. And just did a great job, built a great culture, really got the Gridiron Club started. I'm president of the Gridiron Club now, and that's been fun to continue to see that develop and to do the things that we get to do for the football team. He also did a great job working in the community, and just kind of, and then he had a great staff under him. When he left, he went to coach 6A ball down in Texas in high school. And, when you're a small college coach, they don't get paid the big Division I coaches' salaries. So it was an upgrade for him in that regard, although he prefers coaching college for sure, because you're not dealing with the headaches of high school. It doesn't matter if it's 1A, 2A, or 6A. High school parents are always the problem when it comes to just what you can do for developing a team. And so he did that for a few years. His assistant coach then took over, Will Finley. Will did a good job, and then when Will left, then eventually Tyler became the head coach. And so there's kind of a chain of connection there to Coach Littrell. So we had a chance. Now they're back at Doane. His wife went on, and then she became the head coach of Doane softball. And so they're back up at Doane, and we had a chance to see them and in the tailgate area, which is all Doane. And Josh is wearing his Waldorf University shirt and a Doane hat, I think. So then he was kind of keeping it. So it was kind of a nice reunion in that regard. Both teams went into that with 0-2 records. Waldorf was looking for the win. Obviously, so was Doane, and Doane got it, unfortunately. And so a very frustrating road trip for our Warriors, and kind of a bummer for just the fans and everything like that. Waldorf's got some work to do on the offense. The defense did a pretty good job. I'm not saying that just because our son Jack plays on the defense, and as a freshman, he did get in late in the second quarter and played the rest of the game at cornerback, almost got an interception, ended up with 5 tackles on the day, and overall, he had a pretty good day on defense. The defense did a good job. They turned the ball over a few times, and our offense just couldn't get anything done. They didn't end up with a touchdown eventually late in the game, but that was it, and handed Doane their first win, and they handed us our third loss. And so that was kind of the bummer weekend. But we did get a chance to stay in Omaha. Doane Crete is about an hour or so away, hour 15 away from Omaha. Last time we stayed in Lincoln, Nebraska, and that was fine. That was a little, they're both about a half hour away from either the first place we played, which was in Concordia, against Concordia University, and then the second time here this last weekend we played against Doane, and they were in Crete. Those are a little bit closer to Lincoln. Of course, the Nebraska Cornhuskers in both cases had home games, and so when you run into that, it's hard to find hotels in Lincoln. We stayed at a great hotel. We like the Autograph Collection by Marriott. If you get a chance, folks, to take a little bit of time and stay at an Autograph Collection by Marriott. They're usually just fantastic hotels, and we stayed at the Farnham in Omaha, and it was just wonderful. And so we enjoyed being there, and we had the opportunity to eat something that I guess is a big deal in Nebraska. And what do they call that? What do they call that thing? I don't know. Darn it! I'll have to come back to that. Think of what did we have? Oh my goodness, this is terrible. You're probably screaming at the phone right now. All right, hold on a second. I had to think about this. I have to think of this. Runza. Runza. Okay, so if you don't know what Runza is, and I didn't know what Runza is a chain, and it's what it is. It's a bread pocket that's filled with actually a pretty good tasting ground beef. There's some cabbage in there, some sort of a sauce, not real saucy though, and seasonings. Seems like there's onions in there. Maybe, I don't know about that, but you know what it is? It's like the tater tot hot dish without the tater tots. Does that make sense? And probably without the mushroom sauce, although you can get them with mushrooms. Anyway, we were on our way back from the game, and we said we should probably have this Runza situation. And so we did, and it was good. It was different. I have to say, it was a little different. It's good, and it is filling. So if you're in Nebraska, you should check out Runza. It is a chain. It's like a fast food chain, but it doesn't seem like fast food. You can get fries with that, of course. First opened, I guess, in like 1949 in Lincoln, which is the capital of Nebraska. And Runza has been, I guess it's a staple for well over 70 years. And they've got locations all over Nebraska and even in Colorado and Kansas and somewhere in Iowa, although I haven't seen one here in Iowa. So Runza, coming to a place near you. It is an official partner of University of Nebraska Athletics, and they are sold at football games too. And it's pretty good. Driving through Nebraska, you should probably get a Runza. It doesn't give you the Runza, as far as I'm aware of. I mean, I didn't have that effect on me. But if you have, I guess, I don't know, it was good. So we had a runza, Runza. Check it out. It's kind of a traditional food that's related to, I guess, Northern German, Russian type people whom emigrated to the that part of the country, and it's kind of a meat pocket type thing that they could. It does hold the heat pretty well, and they could put it in their lunch pails, and they could go out and it's a great way to have food on the go for a long time, since the 1800s, or maybe even further back than that. So we kind of checked out into the history of runza. It is interesting enough, but not enough to continue to make an entire episode about the runza. And like I said, it shouldn't give you the runzas. Not that I'm aware of. Anyway, hard not to make that joke. So that is also, since it's a football weekend, we did. I lost. So it's a 1-2 weekend for me. It's the high school won, the university lost, and I lost in fantasy football to my wife, which is not great, but that is what happens. And it did, and pretty good. She beat me pretty good there in that case. So now technically I still have, as of this recording, I still have my kicker left, but that kicker would have to score an incredible number of points for me to make up like 40-point deficit. So I'm really not doing well in fantasy today, and we'll see how it goes next week. But speaking of things that did not go well, last week's broadcast, I did a little preview, I suppose, of the presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. And that did not go the way that the Trump folks thought it did at all. Kamala Harris won that debate. I mean, she did. And the reason she won the debate is because Donald Trump is easily distracted he'll just take the bait, and they know how to get under his skin. He's so thin-skinned when it comes to his rallies and his reputation, the things that he's the most proud of. And that should have been like the number one thing to prepare against. Like, they're going to pick on you for these things. And he should have been able to handle that. He didn't. He did not handle it well. He took the bait, and that's how you get distracted and you end up making crazy claims. He did not prepare for the debate. He thinks he can just roll in and beat you on personality and witty commentary, and it doesn't come off with great personality or witty as one thinks. So just take some time, focus on the things that are pretty easy to beat up on her and her party for. Like, it's a terrible economic concept. It's a terrible idea of what the role of the government in the people's lives are. They're building an entire election on infanticide. There is a huge problem, obviously, with dealing with the border. There's all kinds of flip-flop. There's a lot of things that other commentators spent a lot of time in the last week armchair quarterbacking and Monday morning quarterbacking the debate of what Donald Trump should have said. And yeah, it's true. I think that the ABC commentators just did it. They were horrible, but they should have expected that as well. Let's just assume that there will never, ever, ever be a fair shot. I thought CNN did a pretty decent job, and ABC did a terrible job. So I think Americans probably picked up on that. But again, I didn't think that the officiating of the university game that I went and watched on Saturday was particularly great. I felt like for a moment that ABC must have picked the officials for the GPAC on Saturday. But that's not how you lose a game. You don't blame the officials for the game. Yeah, ABC was stacked against them. They sucked. They were totally in the bag for the Harris campaign. Fine. They should have expected that. Like, Trump should know better. And he should have been able to overcome that pretty easily. It's not like they're wicked smart. In my opinion, most folks that are in the media aren't that wicked smart. They got a good haircut, and that's and maybe a good voice. Maybe that's what it takes. I don't have a good haircut though, so that's why I do podcasting. And anyway, maybe just kind of prepare for all of those things. That was kind of disappointing. On the flip side, though, don't think it's going to make much of a difference. I don't really think that there's I guess I kind of used to seeing it. what Trump can and can't do. I guess you just he's consistent in that regard. And I didn't necessarily glean anything useful from watching that painful debate from Harris either. This opportunity, economy of opportunity is just a bunch of jargon and nonsense, and I don't think they can particularly understand how math works. That being said, Trump didn't do a good job of explaining anything either. So I don't think, they're not going to do another debate. So I'm sure that they will have a field day, being the Harris administration or the Harris campaign will have a field day with that, because they'll say that he's scared of her. That's just how that's going to go. And the media will support that, and we'll see what happens in the next 60 days. I don't know what to say. I don't know. I don't think it moved anybody on either side. If you're going to vote for this tiny sliver of people in the middle that are still hanging out, deciding who they're going to vote for, I guess that's who it's for. And so I don't know if the debate really made any difference whatsoever, because in my opinion, neither candidate did a great job explaining a damn thing. And so even though Harris was clearly better prepared, I feel like the only thing that Trump was prepared for was he knew that he had to work in that "I'm speaking" line. Like that was like he came up with that on his own probably, and he couldn't wait to work it in. And she had some of those too, and it's like, nobody cares. Anyway, enough about the debate. Somebody tried to shoot Donald Trump again over the weekend, so that's becoming just a regular occurrence. Sort of covered in the news, but it's almost like they expect it. The media expects it. It's like he's not now, if somebody had attempted something on, Harris or something like that, that'd be like the end of the world news. It'd be all we'd hear about. And with Trump, it's like, it's been done before. We don't want to give him too much credit. Don't want to make him. And he was golfing at the time on his own resort. And the dude that was taken into custody was spotted by this, Secret Service on the hole ahead of Trump. And he had blue hair on one half of his head. And so I don't know, just America. What's going on? What's going on, America? This is what we're left with. Crazies all over the place. And so we'll have to deal with this, hopefully safely, for both candidates and for everything happening throughout the next 60 days until we get this taken care of. Actually, beyond that, that doesn't mean I don't know who's going to win the election. I have my preference, but at the same time, I don't want to see idiots taking things into their own hands either. I want them to be defeated in the same way that I want the football team that, I want Doan to be defeated next year when we play them again, fair and square on the football field, playing by the same rules, and you just beat them, and that because you're just better at offense and defense and you make fewer mistakes. And that's really how I feel about these debates and how I feel about this election at this point. I'm rooting for one team, but you can't look at that team and say, oh, you're amazing, you're perfect in every way. You suck at some things, and you need to figure that out. And that is how it is in football. So that's how I tied all that together over the weekend. And that's my review of the debate without getting into anything specific, because I do this once a week, and who cares? It's you probably have already gotten your fill of that old news. And as far as, like they said, the assassination stuff, that's just cheating. And that's like a dad coming in and pushing over, an umpire or a referee in a little league game is what that is. And so don't like that, and we can't have that in any of this stuff either. That's not how this works. It is going to lead into the stuff that I do want to talk about, though, that is more important. That's going to give us a Sunnyside perspective of life a little bit. And look, this past weekend, we also, if you're following in the Bible in a year, and look, I can see how many people download this particular element of the show, the Sunnyside of Life, and thank you for everybody who's listening. Appreciate it. And I can also see, since we carry 2 seasons simultaneously this year, with the season 2 being all Bible in a year. So for 365 days, we read 2 or 3, sometimes 4 chapters of the book of the Bible from start to finish. And we are, we're into Daniel right now. We're going to wrap that up and roll into Hosea this week. And so we're getting to the New Testament. We're getting there. In October, I think like October 10th or 11th, we'll get into the New Testament. But I've really enjoyed doing the Old Testament reading. Some of it is quite dry and kind of repetitive. And if you've been listening, and there are certainly fewer of you who are listening to that every day than those of you who are listening to the weekly episode of the Sunnyside of Life. Either way, I appreciate it. And the cool thing is about a podcast, you can always go back and look up and listen to those episodes. So that was the intention. I want to get the entire Bible recorded on the Sunnyside of Life Bible in a Year experience. It'll always be season 2. We'll see if we continue to develop it and work on it, and we'll see how that goes. I still have plans for that. It is a lot of work, does take a lot of time, and but I have been enjoying it, and I hope you have been as well. But we are into Daniel now, into the minor prophets, and I will tell you that obviously most people are more familiar with the gospel, with the New Testament, if they're Christians. If you're a Christian, my wife is like, I'm looking forward to the gospel. I'm like, yeah, but there's 39 books prior to that in the Old Testament that takes most of the year to get through, and that is the foundation upon which the New Testament was based, and it's the completion of the prophecies for the most part in the Messiah through Jesus Christ and all of that. And it's also, a fulfillment of the law, which is described in the first 39 books of the Bible in the Old Testament. And the biggest message is always to keep your eyes on God and to not have any other God but the one true God. And Israel always screws that up. And Israel isn't special because they're special. They are special because they're chosen by God, not because they deserve it, which is pointed out by the Jewish prophets throughout the entire Old Testament. Listen, you're not special because you're Jewish or Hebrew or, part of the nation of Israel. You are chosen by God, and then you are assigned this role in this capacity to follow this law, to follow the way of God, and that it creates this entire, just movement toward the Messiah in Jesus Christ and the fulfillment of all of those things. And throughout history in the Old Testament, just the Jewish people, the Hebrews, the nation of Israel consistently screws it up. They always take their eyes off of God. They are happy with their tradition, but then they blend their traditions with foreign nations and foreign gods. They worship idols. They do just things that are egregious in God's sight, and they're supposed to be special and dedicated to the one true God and live that way. And they always fail. So do we, by the way. It's an analogy, a real situation, but you and I are the same way. We always screw it up. We think, we like being called Christian, or we like having, it's like, oh, I believe in God, and then we always screw it up. I screw it up. I'm sure you screw it up. The Hebrews screwed it up in the Old Testament. We continue to screw it up all the time. It's very, very difficult, and that is the challenge. We're constantly being challenged by the world. And so now we're into Daniel, and I feel like Daniel's interesting and more fun to read. It probably is a little more fun to listen to. You can get through the minor prophets now that we're through like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and some of these longer, prophets. Now we're getting through some of those, and now we're getting into shorter books. And so sometimes just like, hey, we're going to do a whole book in a day, and Daniel goes on for a few days. But Daniel, of course, is the prophet who works for, he's a slave, but he's also an advisor and kind of he ends up being sort of a ruler under King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylonia. And the king of Babylon is Nebuchadnezzar. And if you're, vaguely familiar with the stories of Daniel or from Daniel, you know probably about Daniel in the lion's den. You may know about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, his three friends that get thrown into the fiery furnace, and they don't even get singed. Not a hair is singed on their beard, and all of these fabulous stories, and then the prophecies of Daniel that lead into explaining how the end times work, the coming of a Messiah, and just the wonderful promise that God has. And Daniel's a great book, and so the lessons that we take from all of this stuff is that from particularly Daniel, as we read, as you listen, perhaps this week, and I encourage you to do that. It's lessons in a stalwart faith, because we can talk about, a debate, and we can get frustrated with campaigns and their strategies and the news and unfairness here or unfairness there, or we can get upset about a football game, or I can get upset about my fantasy football score. But at the end of the day, really that stuff, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's just that it is, if it matters too much to us, it becomes a distraction. And as we see in the book of Daniel, when it comes to government, the Hebrews that had been exiled, that had been really pulled into Babylonia, from it, like Israel is no more as a Canaan nation, like Judah is. There's some Hebrews still there. Israel and Judah are like smashed to bits, and now they've been pulled away into this other kingdom and kind of spread all over the place. Daniel's in Babylon, and he gets selected. First of all, you had to be good looking. It's always kind of funny to me, like I think in the Old Testament, they're like very good looking. He's very good. I don't know if that's how they talk, but of course, Daniel's very good looking. David, incredibly good looking, very good looking people. All of these people. Samson, amazing, good looking people. Beautiful women. They're always beautiful. And look, that's a truth too, isn't it? Because you want to talk about the oppressed in the world. The oppressed in the world really aren't necessarily. The truly oppressed people are the ugly people. Whatever the definition is for ugly, it's that they have the hardest row to hoe, don't they? Because the beautiful people have a better life. They have it easier. We give them the benefit of the doubt. Even babies can look in a beautiful face and go, pretty. And, I don't know what it is. They've done studies, whether it's about balance in the face or whatever it is. And we have obviously changing perspectives through culture of what beauty is. And in that does come racism and all of these other things. So but oppression, the truly oppressed are always going to be the ugly folks, whoever they happen to be. And God bless the folks that have, beautiful children. Life's just going to be easier for you if you have beautiful children, because it's going to be easier for them. And that's the best gift you can give to your children, and you have almost no control over it. Although you can, I guess, make your children healthy and keep them fit and all of those things, so that there's hope. But anyway, Daniel's a good-looking guy. Apparently, so are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They pick all these folks out from these slave people that they had in Babylon to become picked out to serve in the government, and they have to go through this process, which includes getting. They have to eat a particular diet. They have to be groomed and trained, the young men without blemish, good looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had the ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them for a daily provision of delicacies of wine, just like the king drank, for 3 years of training. So they had 3 years of this. And then at the end of that time, then they might come and serve before the king, and then they would select who they wanted to. And so part of the people who do this is Daniel, obviously, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whose names in Hebrew, their Hebrew names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And then in Babylon, they changed it to Daniel was the Hebrew name, but his name in Babylon was Belteshazzar. So these 4 Hebrew guys, good looking, smart, they go through this 3-year program. However, they refuse to eat the things that the king Nebuchadnezzar wants them or assigns for them to eat. So because of the law, they followed the law of God. Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. And people liked him, including the chief of the eunuchs. Of course, the chief of the eunuchs was like, listen, I got to feed this to you. I'm in trouble if I don't. And Daniel's like, listen, how about this? How about you test us for 10 days, and all we'll do is we'll eat vegetables to eat and water to drink. So they go on a vegetarian diet, maybe, or a vegan diet. I don't know what they're doing. So we don't get into that, but that's all they do. They say, let us, we'll eat vegetables and drink water. And then at the end of 10 days, you compare us to how we look compared to the other people that are in this program. And so they did, and they came out and they looked better. And so these 4 young men continued on in this program, getting the knowledge and skill in literature and wisdom. And then also Daniel, of course, had the understanding of visions and dreams. And they did not offend God by just complying with whatever they followed the rules of their faith for their food. And God allowed that to happen. And they did this without abandoning their faith. That's the kind of the beginning of the lesson of the book of Daniel, is to be stalwart in your faith, regardless of what the government tells you to do. You must be stalwart in your faith and put it in God's hands. And so Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. He doesn't tell his wise men and magicians that. Wouldn't it be great if we had magicians as part of the staff or the advisors for our presidents? Is like, well, so we have wise men and women, of course, wise men and women, and depending on the administration, wise women who are men and wise men who are women are all advising the president. And we also have magicians, Penn and Teller, David Copperfield. We got the best ones, and others. I'm not a big guy in magicianry, but they are all there. Maybe Nate Bargatze's dad, he's a magician, comes in, advises the president on certain things. I would love to see that happen. I realize that we're probably talking about back in the day of maybe the more scientific type people prior to them being the science, but I guess we have magicians in Anthony Fauci. He was the science. And so he was a magician, certainly disappeared without any type of consequence. So there's possibility that we still do have magicians in our government. Anyway, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream that really disturbs him, and he's like, tell me what my dream was, and then tell me what it means. And none of them can do it because that's kind of an impossible task. Tell me what I can imagine Trump saying something like that. I had a dream. It was the best dream. It was amazing. And I'm not a good Trump impersonator. You got to tell me what it means. You tell me what I dreamed, and I'll tell you if you're right. And if you don't get it right, I'm going to have your houses destroyed. I'm going to kill you and everybody in your family, and I'm going to have your houses destroyed. Which does kind of, in today's society, it would be kind of nice if there were actual political consequences for all these political advisors who give this ass backwards advice and say, yeah, or even the politicians like, okay, well, you say this, and I know you're using words that someone has wrote for you, and you're just following the script and trying to make it sound, good for test groups because you think we're all a bunch of idiots. But if that doesn't work out, what consequences do you face? Perhaps we can raise your house. And I don't mean raise like lift it up. I mean like raise with the Z, tear it down. Would that change the honesty factor in Washington, D.C. or in our state capitals if like the words that came out of politicians' mouth and the bureaucrats, if the consequences were like, yes, well, it turns out you were wrong and you lied, and now we're going to demolish your home. Bernie Sanders would have like 3 or 4 opportunities to be wrong, because he's got more houses than you would think a socialist would have. But anyway, So this is Nebuchadnezzar's deal. Nobody can come up with it. They're very upset about it. And he's like, you know what? I've had it with all of you. Just I'm going to get rid of all my wise men. So a very Joe Stalin-y type thing. And Nebuchadnezzar there. They come to wipe out Daniel. And Daniel's like, whoa, what's going on? I'm not even. And they tell him what the situation is. So he's like, okay, let me go. Okay, don't kill anybody. Let's go. Not to knock down people's houses. Daniel basically saves everybody by going. I mean, probably some people got, their houses raised. They were in the mood to raise some houses, I'm guessing. So Daniel goes, sees Nebuchadnezzar. He's like, I'll tell you what your dream means. But I'm going to tell you what you had as a dream, and then I'm going to tell you what it means, but you're probably not going to like it. And so he proceeds to do that. And, listen to Bible in a Year if you want to know what it is that he's talking about. It's in chapter 2. So it's in the first 3 chapters are in the first day, which is already played. So you can go back to that if you want to. I think it started on Saturday, if you want to go through that. But this dream, Daniel saves the day. He explains what it means. He basically tells Nebuchadnezzar, look, you're the head of gold. You're a super king. God has blessed you by his choice. And there's going to be several kingdoms after you, and they're going to continue to get weaker and weaker until you get to the bottom of the statue, which you dreamed about, which is, iron and clay mixed together, and it just is easily crumbled. And then the whole kingdom will disappear, which all did eventually happen. So Nebuchadnezzar is like, I am the head of gold. That is exactly what I dreamed about. Now I understand what it means. Congratulations. And then he promotes Daniel and his friends to really be in charge of most of Babylon and the provinces and all that other good stuff. Then King Nebuchadnezzar, I don't know if it's because of the head of gold thing on the statue that he had it on his brain, but then he decides to make a whole statue, a huge statue made of gold, like huge statue made of gold. And everybody has to worship this statue of gold, this golden image. So one of God's primary, messages is you shall have no other gods before me. That's the big deal. And the Hebrews always break that down. It's always because they're led astray by their own selfish wants and desires, and trying to probably be liked and included with foreigners who come in, and they're like, look at this piece of wood I carved into a god. It's the god of donuts, and if you like donuts, you should pray to this piece of wood or this piece of gold. And throughout the Old Testament, they're talking all the time. It's like, you know how ridiculous it is that like that was a tree, and you didn't even use the whole tree for the idol. You made other stuff like a house and a boat and probably some, stuff to sit on and whatever. And then you also, carved a god out of that. Like, are you crazy? It doesn't register in your little brain that that's just a piece of wood, or that's a piece of silver, or that's a piece of gold. And we do this to this day. Like, it doesn't occur to you like TV's not real, that the internet isn't real, that social media isn't real, that the opinion of our friends and our neighbors and whatever it is that in the world putting upon us, like that stuff isn't what we should be focused on. That wealth and fame and beauty and all of these things that are worldly take our focus off of God. These are all idols, and there's zillions of them, and it's just throughout the whole Bible. And this is exactly what's happening. And now Nebuchadnezzar makes this giant one, and he wants everybody to worship it. And these 4 guys are like, "Nah, we're not going to do that." And so they decide that the deal is every time that they blow the horn, and then there's a bunch of other instruments that they use, that everybody in Babylon has to pray to this this idol. And these guys won't do it. And Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they're not going to do it. And if the consequences of not doing it according to the king is like, you have to be thrown into the fiery furnace. I don't know why they just have a fiery... Babylon's got some... Governmentally, they've got some interesting things laying around, starting with this fiery furnace thing, right? I don't know why they've got a giant fiery furnace. It seems like it's a pretty big one that you could walk around in, and they can throw huge logs in it. They can really get her going, and the fiery furnace exists. Also, a den of lions. Like there's a pit of lions just around Babylon. So they have some interesting things as features, I would say, to the city, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But they've got this fiery furnace, and if you don't follow the rules and worship this stupid golden idol that's enormous, when the horns blow, then you got to get thrown into it. And so they get told on because they won't do it. And they explain to the king, well, we're not going to do it because we worship only the one true God. And that's just a piece of gold. No disrespect. We think you're a great king, but we're not going to do that. And the king's like, fine, then into the fire you go. And that'll teach you. And I'm going to burn you up into little bits. So they bind him up. They throw him into the fire. And the soldiers that are carrying him into the fiery furnace, they die because they get burned up before they even get, like, they throw him in and then they just are consumed themselves. And then Shadrach, Meshach, I don't know what Daniel's doing. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're all in the fiery furnace. And then Nebuchadnezzar is watching all of this. I'm sure he's expecting like spontaneous combustion because they really threw extra logs on it. They really got that sucker going. And it was record setting, if it was a... Can you imagine if it was a Trumpian fiery furnace? It's going to be the biggest fire you've ever seen. It's going to be so hot. You're not even going to believe it. It's going to be And so this happens. They get thrown into the fire. The soldiers that carried him in there get consumed by the fire. They die. And then Nebuchadnezzar stands up in his throne and he's like, hey, did we not throw 3 dudes in there? And they're like, yeah, we threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they're like, well, I see 4 people in there walking around like it's just a regular afternoon. And, so then he rushes as close as he can get. And he's like, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, come out. So they're in there with a 4th person, right? They come out of the fire. They're completely, nothing wrong with them. They got no burns. Not even a hair on their beard is singed. Like their clothes are fine. Everything's like they were in this ridiculously hot, fiery furnace, completely unscathed. So that would cause, I think, just about anyone, including Nebuchadnezzar, to go, okay, you win. Your God is the one true God. Clearly, this is impossible. And that is a miracle. That is a miracle. The definition, as we talked in earlier episodes of a miracle, is like it's naturally impossible. There's things that happen that are naturally possible and probable even though the probability might be extremely low for something to happen. But like for instance, when, Trump turning his head just to the side and getting hit in the ear, that's not a miracle. That's naturally possible, and we can explain that, and that's what happened. But a miracle, a true miracle, is like, how do you explain? This is it. I don't know what the Catholic definition of, they kind of got the miracle thing figured out, I guess, by definition. But the way I understand it is like, it's just naturally, it's not a possibility. And this is clearly the case. How do you go into a fiery furnace and come out completely unscathed without any special equipment or any of that stuff that we might have today and still wouldn't necessarily succeed with? That's a miracle. They see this. They bow down. Nebuchadnezzar bows down. This is the one true God. It's amazing. And so he continues to have, and then Nebuchadnezzar has another dream, and this time he doesn't trick everybody. He just tells them about this big tree that he's got, that he dreams of a tree. It gets cut down, and then Daniel explains to him that you're going to become a raving lunatic, and you're going to eat grass, and you're going to be like a cow eating grass for a number of years. And other people are going to take your kingdom away, and it's just going to be a bad deal for you. But you are going to come out of it, and that does happen, unfortunately for Nebuchadnezzar, and he does become. He became like a cow. He was walking about the royal palace in Babylon, and he's looking at everything. This, even though he'd seen the whole fiery furnace thing, he's obviously blessed by the one true God. He's aware of all of this. He's got advisors that are explaining how this is happening. I don't know what the magicians are doing. He's looking out over Babylon, which is an amazing city. He's like, I did this. This is all me. Isn't it amazing? Look what I have done. And how many times have you or I done that, even on our level of our home, our lawn? I mow the lawn. I'm like, whew, look at this. Look at this. I did this. I'm amazing. Like, I bailed all this. Amazing. And we do things, but we're able to do those things by the grace of God. And this is funny to me because, politicians do this all the time. They look at like, I created this. It's like Biden and Harris claiming that they have anything to do with the bounce back from COVID. We created more jobs than anybody else. They're still living on that lie. that we shut down our government. We had a pause in our economy, and then those jobs came back. And so there's really nothing that any politician can do to create jobs unless they're government jobs, which just is costing you and I more money. But politicians do it all the time. I did that. I'm great. Trump does. He takes credit for everything. Biden jumps in front of a parade. He's still president, by the way. Harris takes credit for whatever was good in the Biden administration and ignores like none of the bad stuff ever happened. She had nothing to do with that. These are how politicians are. They're all like that. They take credit because they want you to think that they're really great. And then Nebuchadnezzar is doing this. He's like, and he probably actually was in charge of building this amazing kingdom. And then God's like, that's enough. He was, just as he was talking about how awesome he was, a voice came down from heaven and just said, Nebuchadnezzar, the kingdom has departed from you. And so then he goes insane, and he goes out and he's frothing at the mouth. He's eating grass. He's not communicating. He's a lunatic. And this goes on for just as Daniel had explained to him would happen in this dream. And so that's very interesting. And that comes out, I think, in the second time that we read all of our stuff in Daniel. So it'd be the second day. I think that was Sunday. So that was yesterday. And then another thing happened. So Belshazzar takes over. That's after Nebuchadnezzar. And this dude is the king. And he takes, so all of the temple was ransacked in Jerusalem. When Babylon finally just crushed Judah, and Israel had already been gone for a while. And so they take all of the stuff from the temple back to Babylon. And then Belshazzar is king, and he's like, hey, all my wives, all my concubines. I always wonder what it was like. What would it have like? Can you imagine like Thanksgiving dinner? Like, this is my wife. This is Trixie. She's my concubine. Good. I mean, I can't imagine. Anyway, they're at a feast. Belshazzar is having a feast with his wives and his concubines. They're not good enough to be wives. I don't even know what it even means. It's just so obtuse and weird, old world, like craziness. But like that just had to be something. And then with all of his advisors and probably some magicians in there doing some things, they can't forget the magicians. And they just say, hey, you know what? We're having a good time here. I want to drink out of the the cups and the chalices from the temple in Jerusalem. So bring all that stuff we captured in, and we're just going to drink with these cups that were meant for the service in the temple at Jerusalem for the one true God. And so they do, and this happens. And then just as they're enjoying themselves, probably telling funny jokes, maybe there's a, magician doing some magic tricks or things like that. And then the most amazing magic trick that they could do happens, and a hand, like a human hand, appears just by itself, not like from the Addams Family or anything like that, but you can think of it like that, I suppose, if you want, and it writes with its finger on the wall. In these words, and the words are kind of interesting. I had to go back to it said, let me see the words with the finger. In the same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his hips were loosened and his knees knocked against each other. He was so scared. And then the king, as it would be, that'd be pretty frightening. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers. Now they got astrologers, the Chaldeans, the soothsayers. Interesting title, soothsayers. Politicians got plenty of soothsayers. Basically everybody in their staff. And so that hasn't changed. The king spoke, saying to the wise men, whoever reads this writing tells me what it means. We're going to give you a purple clothing, and we're going to have a gold chain hung around your neck, and you'll be like the third ruler in the kingdom, which is a pretty big deal, apparently. You're number 3, which would be like, I'm going to make you Speaker of the House. I'm going to put you in a cool purple outfit and a big gold chain. Anyway, nobody can figure out, nobody knows what it means. And Daniel is called in to solve this problem once again. And of course, he does know what it means. The words are mena, tekel, upharsin. Or upharsin. I might say that wrong, probably. But and the meaning is mena, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Peres, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and they clothed Daniel with the purple and put on a chain. Daniel didn't really need all that, but he did become third ruler of the kingdom. He explains what that all means. God is working, and this is proven out, and every time to these leaders of Babylon that this is what's going on, and every time they're like, "Yep, that makes total sense," and then they blow it again, just like you and I, just like our government, just like our local government, our federal government, every nation in the world, human beings, like we get God smacked. God's like, haha, here I am, and then we're like, yes. And then the next minute we're like, well, but over here's something shiny. And that's what occurred against Belshazzar. Went back that very night and he got killed, like, whoop, dead. And then Darius the Mede became king when he was 62. Darius is king over Babylon, and he is, he decides, again, with the help of he likes Daniel. Daniel's still number 3 in charge. And some of the Chaldeans, these other government, can you imagine? I mean, it's so weird thinking that there would be people in any government, certainly, let alone Babylon, but there were advisors and maybe heads of agencies, heads of bureaus. And they were jealous of number 3. They were jealous of Daniel. And they didn't and it's hard to imagine. I know this is Old Testament stuff. It doesn't happen anymore. But can you imagine a government where there were heads of agencies, advisors to the supreme leader that were going to plot against another member of the cabinet? Can you imagine? I mean, that doesn't happen anymore, thank goodness. And we certainly don't see agencies going rogue or acting in a way in our, thankfully, modern times where they are running shadowy type operations. That fortunately only occurred in Babylon, Chaldea, the Medes. And Darius is listening to his advisors, and not Daniel in this case, and they're like, "Hey, we're not going to be able to get rid of this Daniel guy because King really likes him. He's really good at his job. He's solved a lot of problems for Babylon. Blah 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 blah. But he's got a different religion than we do, and so we're going to go ahead and use that against him. And we'll figure out how to do that." And they are smart. They're conniving little twerps, but they are smart. And they say, "Hey, King Darius, we're just thinking, wouldn't it be great if, because you're such an awesome king, and what king doesn't love to hear that we should make it a law that you sign with your seal, and it's like you're the only person that people can pray to. And if anybody is praying to anybody else except for you, then we'll have to throw them into a den of lions. That pit of lions that we haven't been using for a while, that's the one over there that we have next to the fiery furnace area. That whole square of torture, that's the one, the den of lions pit. That's where we want you to." And Darius is like, "I mean, it sounds like a good idea. I am a pretty awesome king, and this clearly can't affect me negatively, and probably everybody likes me anyway, Kim Jong-un, so this is probably good. And so, yeah, let's do that." And they're like, "Just a reminder, when you sign this, that this is the law and nobody can get out of it, right? And he's like, "Yeah, obviously I'm the king. I'm Darius. Duh. Let's go." And, like many human beings who are supreme leaders at some point in their life, they probably don't think of the consequences of their egotistical actions. And so this immediately is like designed for it. Nobody has a problem with this. They're like, we're going straight after Daniel. Daniel learns about this. He's like, oh, that's too bad, because I'm still going to pray 3 times a day facing towards Jerusalem to the one true God. And he goes into his room and his window is open. Like he's not hiding it. He's not trying to be secretive. He's done the same thing his whole time. And they see him. He prays down there like, aha, we got you. Gotcha. And they grab him and they haul him up before Darius. And Darius is like, dang it, I didn't think about the faithful people. Dang it. That's really screwing up. And he's like, yeah, but you said you gotta throw him in the fire because, no, not the fire. We already tried that. We got to throw in the pit of lions over there. We're going to try the pit of lions thing. And he's like, you're right. I wish it wasn't the case. And so they threw him into the pit of lions, threw Daniel in there. Darius felt really bad about it. They sealed it with a big rock. They put the king's seal on it. And then he had the other seals, like of the other underling leaders of the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Defense guys. They all have little signet ring, put their little thing in the wax. Like, we're all signed off on this. Nobody can break the seal on this rock. He's going to get eaten by the lions. It's probably already happened. It is what it is. Problem solved. And Darius feels terrible all night. He doesn't eat. He doesn't take his usual entertainment. So the magicians are upset. They're like, I've been working on cutting this dude in half for a month, and tonight was the big show. It's an illusion. But the only person relieved by this, of course, is the person who actually probably would have gotten cut in half. And the magicians aren't performing. Darius is just very sad and upset and not taking his usual food. It's just very sad for Darius because he realizes he's been tricked by his advisors. They were trying to get Daniel the whole time, but he follows through with the law because the law is the law. I know that's a foreign concept to a lot of Americans and people in the modern world, but the law is the law. However you want to, you like it or not, it's the law. And that's what happened. And so the next morning he wakes up, he rushes out, and he cries, he's like, hey, Daniel. I'm not doing a very good impression of Darius, but I don't know what he sounded like, so it doesn't matter anyway. Also different language. And he's, Daniel, are you there? And Daniel's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm here. Good morning, my king. How are you? You can imagine the relief. Can you imagine if it was your own kid thrown into a den of lions and you just and then you hear their voice? What a relief you would feel wash over you. And this isn't his kid, but he loves Daniel. He has the stone removed, and there is Daniel standing amongst the lions in the lion's pit, which they have, it's a theme park. And he's just down there. And Daniel's like, yeah, my God saved me. He shut the mouths of these lions, and they have been just gentle animals with me. And so he's fine, not a mark on him. They pull him out, and then again, it would be kind of cool. I'm not saying we should go with the lion's den or the fiery furnace approach or raising people's houses, but it would be kind of interesting how politics might change if our advisors, our bureaucrats, and our elected officials faced consequences for being wrong, purposefully wrong, misleading, deceptive, and stupid. And so Darius grabs those advisors, those Chaldeans, and maybe a couple magicians, sorry guys, throws them into and their families, not just the dudes, their families, into the pit of lions, which apparently is quite large. And they were all just destroyed, annihilated, eaten, torn to shreds before they even hit the ground, according to the book of Daniel. And all because, so clearly the lions were very hungry. And maybe they were looking at Daniel, who was, as we know, very good looking. Maybe he looked very tasty to the lions, and they also were shut up by the hand of God. And they're like, oh, as soon as another person comes in here, I'm going to just tear him to bits. And that's what happened. And then the rest of the book of Daniel moves on into prophetic visions of the end times, which we'll get into later this week. So Daniel is a great book. It's being covered right now in season 2, which runs simultaneously with the Sunnyside of Life. We've been working through the entire Bible. We're going to continue to do that in about a month. Less than a month now, we'll be into the New Testament. But I encourage you to take a listen to some of these to the Bible in a year, because it does give you just so much more insight into the world of faithful Christianity. What Christ brought to the entire world and how we got there. And the truth is that you can get the gospel. You're not saved by the intellectual argument of provided by reading the Bible. I believe that the Bible is true and accurate. I believe it is inspired from God, and I believe that you should read it. However, that is not how the gospel. That's not how you're saved or brought to the gospel. As you think about when we get to it, but just looking ahead a little bit, when you think about Pentecost, you think about the 3,000 people that were just converted on the Word of God alone, or for 200 years prior to the entire New Testament being written about and collected, and then hundreds of years after that, so that we've got what we consider the Bible. People were being converted on the Word of God alone, and a lot of them couldn't read anyway. They were illiterate, so they relied on the Word spoken to them. And that's the evangelical part of all of us as faithful people, to be able to tell about the gospel, and to be able to communicate the love of God, the justness of God, and the fear of God, which is all present in the Bible. But it's not necessarily the Bible as a book itself that saves. It's the Holy Spirit, the hand of God, that brings that into our hearts, and that conversion and that rebirth. However, if you have the opportunity, you should be hopefully listening, reading. I encourage you, however you do it. It doesn't have to be through, the Sunnyside of Life Bible in the Air experience, although it can be. However you do it, I encourage you to do it, because it is fun. It is so worthwhile. And I know that I put a little bit of a humorous spin on this, but the lesson from Daniel is just to be stalwart in your faith, regardless of the consequences of the government and the onerous things that may come upon you. And to recognize, too, as we tie it back to how we kind of started this show today, that God decides, and this is a message throughout the minor prophet and the major prophets, actually, that says, look, we're going to put in charge, God's going to put in charge who God wants to be in charge, whether that's of Babylon, whether it's of Israel, whether it is of the United States of America or Russia or Great Britain or whatever. God's going to put in charge. Like, all governments just exist because the will of God allows them to exist. And that includes people that are not good people, that may be put in charge, because there is a purpose for them too. Don't mistake the idea that if the person that you vote for gets elected to whatever position, that is, you're correct in assuming that is the will of God. You may not be correct in assuming that they have the that they have the best interest, that they have God's intention, I guess, at heart. They may be being used for a completely different purpose that we have yet to discover. So that is what we're rolling into the next 60 days. It's what we deal with every day, whether it's in politics or, the politics of your workplace, or sometimes even maybe the politics of your family. But the focus is to be on God, to be a slave to God, and a slave to Christ, who is our Redeemer, and to recognize that we will probably blow it and turn from God. So we must be stalwart in our faith, and that is, I think that's a pretty hopeful thing to think about. If we can just be stalwart like Daniel, if we can enjoy serving our God and not fear what may come of the future, because we're not in charge of that anyway. That doesn't mean that we can't be active and that we shouldn't do our civic duty. That doesn't mean that we can't, argue, and that doesn't mean that we can't have, that we shouldn't be involved. But those things cannot become our God. They can, because if we abandon God for an idol, you can be sure that God will abandon us. You have to turn from those idols, and only through faith in Christ can you possibly come and stand before God and be wholly forgiven. That's the purpose of the Messiah. That's the purpose of these prophets that we're working through right now to let us know this is what's happening. And it also hopefully shows you that there's not much difference between us today and ancient Babylon, except maybe for the number of concubines at the table. With that in mind, I hope you have a great week this week. We'll talk to you more next week. Thanks for being patient and waiting around for a little later broadcast. I hope it was worth your while. Get a chance, listen to the Bible in a year. And until next week, I hope you find a way to be the sunny side of someone else's life. I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of the Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty and pursuits, be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.